Good to see everybody. Excited to be here. The end of camp. Um, Exciting year. Looking forward to the season. Our guys have worked really hard from January. The guys that were here. The guys during the off season, spring football. We had some addition of other guys after spring ball, and then accumulation of our team during camp in August. Obviously, we've been in 2 days, or not 2 days, but camp like everybody else, and just super excited about this football team. And we'll see what happens this year. But with that said, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
Questions for Coach?
Coach Victor Aquino, Mountain West Connection. What coming in Friday night? What positions or matchup groups do you see as being the most decisive? Specifically on the line of scrimmage and the trenches. They're pretty known for their physicality and whatnot. So how do you see that?
Vic, a great question. Coach Drinkle, their coach, really good football coach. Obviously got this job with all the success that they had at Army. He was was a head coach before that at another level, but when he was at Army, they did a really good job. He was on the offensive side of the ball. They're a physical football team at West Point, but also the guy that he hired, at Eastern Washington, were known to have a lot of quarterback run in their offense, pretty multiple, and Coach Chapman does offensively. And so yes, we recognize their DNA, just kind of who they are. Just try to physicality up front is stuff that we worked on to get prepared for. Recognizing that yes, up in the trenches is going to be a big part of the game. Obviously, Coach Cronin, too, their defensive coordinator, was also at West Point and been in other places, a veteran coach, and coached the D line when he was at Army, but his coach pretty much everywhere. Linebackers and his defensive lines were always tough, hard-nosed football players. So we don't expect anything but a physical outfit that's coming in here from Central Michigan. So we're gonna have to play well up front. We're gonna have to stop the run. That's easier said than done, and we're gonna have to find a way to be physical in our run game too. So, but yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's the game's gonna be won up front this week.
Aaron Johnson with the Mercury News. And what have you liked from the defensive line heading into this first matchup, especially from the new transfer and then Nafa as well?
Yeah, so obviously everything starts inside with Nafa. And Nafa's one of our best players coming back. Had a great season last year. Got some all-conference accolades going into the season, which are well deserved. Beside him, we got Quincy, who got injured, the Q in the Washington State game, and he's back healthy after missing pretty much all of the season. So excited to have him back. And manning the other side, we'll have Justin Stearns that's really worked hard, so now he's, a solid, 270, 275, and the kid's just, has lived in the weight room, has built himself up, and put on good weight, along with Vili, a transfer from Utah. Those are probably the starters and guys in there. And, we got Rooney, Solo Langi, Etu, just some different guys. We feel like we have quite a few guys that can play on the edge. Nate Lewis, but I thought those guys did some good things this camp, but we'll see. We'll see in a couple of days how they do, but I feel good about them and have confidence in them.
And then, coach for the Chippewas is in his first year with a new program, and then you were in your first year with a new program last year. Just can you share some insight about the challenges that come with that and what he's preparing for?
You want me to share insights with him for?
No.
Okay. Yeah, they'll let him figure it out on his own. We're getting ready to play him, but yeah, when you go to a new program, there's always stuff that you learn. There's, last year at this time I was still swimming in August, trying to figure things out, because I was out of school for 25 years when I knew everything. I knew everything about the school, and then you go to a school you don't know anything, and so I think he's got some familiarity though with that area, Midwest guy, and I think he's got some familiarity to school. But coaching ball is coaching ball, and he'll do a good job. Like I said, he's a really good football coach. Experienced a ton of success while he was at at Army, and also he had success when he was a head coach prior to that.
Nick Urias with KSJS. Coach, I know, and you stressed it a lot last year that the special teams was kind of a weakness for you guys. Have you noticed any improvements, throughout, the fall camp and, over the spring, just improvements in that phase of your team?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a week. I mean, we had a lot of weaknesses last year. I feel like we could improve on, but we got Dennis, that came from USC, and right now he's our place kicker. We're excited to have him. So having a guy that's kicked in big ball games, that is experienced. There's no you can't replicate experience and kicking when you got thousands of people yelling and there's pressure. I mean, and, anybody can kick in an empty stadium, and so we recognize that experience is going to help us. Trent is coming back as our punter, and so Trent was a really good punter for us last year. We feel like he's going to continue to do good things. We signed AJ as our long snapper. AJ's had a great camp, and Matthias is our place kicker, who kicked for us last year. And so, just in the different special team phases, hopefully we'll do a good job. I don't know if we're bad at, but probably average at best, and hopefully we can improve in all of those phases in special teams because. They talk about the three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. But in special teams, there's, you have the different phases too. You got the 5 phases: punt, return, kickoff, return, and also you got field goal and field goal block. So hopefully we've improved in all those phases.
And then within the secondary, you got guys that transfer out. You got some late spring additions. Just what have you seen from those guys? Just as a whole, really come together because there's going to be some new faces that are be making some plays for your team this year.
Yeah, so having Isaiah Rivas and Jalen and Jaws at our safeties, we got 2 experienced guys coming back, so that helps us. Also with Larry, so kind of our third guy there and at the safety position. Charles Cox and Hunter will be guys that kind of be in the mix there. So we got 3 guys that have played a lot, and Charles is a transfer. Hunter's been in our program. He's worked really hard this offseason. Thought he did a really good job. And at the corner position, we moved Jalen Thomas from safety to corner, a local kid, and he's probably had the best spring, fall camp of anybody on our team. I mean, he's done really, really good things. We've been really pleased with him at corner. And on the other side, we got Jalen Boehner, who's been in our program for a while. Starting on the other side, Caleb Presley, the kid that came from Washington, will be in the mix there too. And so, Caleb came pretty late. I mean, he came in July. It kind of shows you it's kind of crazy nowadays, just the way the portal works. But to the kid's credit, he's worked hard to try to get up, to snuff on all the terminology and all the schemes. And then Runyon is another kid playing that corner. And those are probably the guys who will be in the mix, at our corner position. And yeah, those guys have worked hard. And to the, Coach Burns has done a really good job with the corner, and obviously Coach Odum, our defensive coordinator, who oversees not only our whole entire defense but also our safeties. I have great confidence with 2 veteran coaches of their caliber in the back end.
Hey Coach, Lucas Quick from the Spear here. You guys had Nick Nash and Justin Lockhart, who were really just such a dynamic duo for your guys' offense. What can we expect from the new receiving room to fill in for their shoes this season?
Yeah, those are 2 big shoes to fill, with obviously Nick, winning the Triple Crown last year for catches, touchdowns, and yards per catch. Justin Lockhart, almost 1,000 yards too. Really explosive, dynamic receivers. But, at the end of the year, it wasn't like a surprise, like, oh, wait a minute, those guys are leaving. So we knew that going into it, and I thought, Coach Billy Ray Stutzmann has done an awesome job of recruiting, and we're probably deeper. We're probably deeper as an overall unit on the receivers. Now, will they play as well as Nick and as J-Lock? We'll see. I mean, obviously we know Matt Coleman that, caught over 100 yards worth of balls in the bowl game. He's coming back. I got transferred Danny Scudero from Sac State. Leland Smith, outside receiver from Purdue. He's a big kid that can run. Um, Malachi Riley from Arizona, another talented kid. Kyrie Scholes, who didn't play last year, but he's going to be in the mix too. Cooper Hoke is a guy too. Um, Tuli Tagovailoa. Jace Nix is a young kid. So those are some guys in that position room that we feel really good about. Mason Sterling, transfer from Cal. So we recognized that we were losing some guys, and so again, I thought Billy did a really good job of looking where our needs were at and attacking the portal, attacking high school recruiting, attacking uh, um, junior college recruiting. Jahari Johnson's another kid. And so we like that room, but they got to produce. They got to produce athletically. We like who they are. But we'll see in the next couple of days how they do. But those guys have worked hard, and Billy's done a really good job with them.
And obviously, in under 2 weeks down the road, you guys head down to face Texas, who's right now ranked the top team in the nation. But is there any message in the locker room right now to tell you guys to not overlook this game in Central Michigan before you head down to Austin?
Yeah, we're San Jose State. We're not Alabama. We're not an SEC team. We can't overlook anyone. If we were playing, I don't even know high schools. If we're playing a high school team here, we're San Jose State, and that's never been our approach. Has never been my approach as a coach. But if we don't come ready to play and get ready for this team, recognizing we don't know a lot about their personnel. We kind of see who's coming back, who they've recruited, but it's going to be different schemes, so you don't know how their staff will mix and match their guys. You never know that. Sometimes the staff comes in and they do their own evaluations. They might start differently with guys they like, and so we don't really know much of that. But don't know the coaches personally that are on their staff, but I know their body of work, and I know what type of coaches they are and what type of teams they produce and how they play. And so, yeah, if we're thinking about the Longhorns, we're gonna get killed, on Friday. We better be ready to play on Friday.
Hey, Coach, Niles with the Spear. You just said earlier that this game will be won in the trenches. What have you seen from you guys that makes you so confident that they will get the job done?
Well, like I said, I don't know if there's things you feel good about, and as a coach, you always go like this. There's good practice, a good period, a bad period, um, a good play, a bad play. And so there's, you try to think about the good plays, but then in your mind you think about some of the things where you didn't get it right. But I trust our guys. I feel like our guys have worked hard. I already talked about the D line, and I feel like with our O line, Joe is coming back at center, Joe Harvard, and Joe started the last end of the season after getting injured last year, and so he's very familiar now with the offense. So we feel comfortable having a guy, with this size in the middle, a guy that 6'5", 300 pounds, 295 in that range, can move, smart. Our two guards are pretty athletic kids, Tyler Chen and Sione Nomane, and so we feel really good about those guys. They played a lot of football for us last year. And Seti Lapuaho is our left tackle, and Seti's the guy that started all last year for us. The new guy is Nate Hale, but I guess to answer your question, it's a really good question. If there's any question mark going on online, it would be him. But I thought he had a heck of a spring ball and a great camp. So because of that play and the way they've played, I feel good. And we got some backers in there. Hudson played all last year as our center for 7 games. And we got some guys inside, Daniel Moleni, Simeon Mayalva, are guys that can play at guard, along with Daenerys. And we got 2 young tackles in Manny Serna and also Coney at our right tackle. So probably we go too deep with guys. And like I said, I already mentioned our defensive line. Yeah, you always feel good, but we haven't played yet. So you're always kind of like cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way.
And then there's a lot of nerves heading into a week 1 game. As a head coach of this team, how do you make sure your team is mentally prepared?
Well, mental preparation that's a long process. It's every day, it's every period, it's every meeting. We have a lot of team meetings. and try to share messages with our players and things to try to get ready. Our position coaches do the same thing. Our leaders on our team try to do same things. Our captains, our leadership council. Um, mental preparation is, people don't recognize that's a big part of getting ready. But it's not anything that you can quantify. You can quantify lifting weights and running and all that kind of stuff, but it's hard to quantify if a guy is mentally prepared. And so, yeah, I spend a lot of time on mental preparation. It's a big part of playing this game.
Hey, Coach. Hattie Barghouti from the Spear and Spartan Daily. So I wanted to ask more about the QB depth going into the season. I talked to Walker last week, and he praised the QB depth. Who's kind of like the main guy leading the QB2 role at this point?
You're talking the whole room, it's. I mean, Walker's our quarterback. I mean, it's the great thing about it. This year, last time we didn't know. I think we actually just announced it at the beginning of this week. Last year, game week, there was going to be Emmett. But we knew after the bowl game, that Walker was going to be our leader. He knew that. He took the team, he took over. He led a lot of the off-season practices, and so he's done a great job in leading. And he's a great leader from the standpoint he's more of a gatherer. Some guys can be a little bit more demonstrative and a little bit more authoritative, but that's not Walker. He's more of a calm leader. But I've been really, really impressed with him. You got Tama and Xavier who are behind him. Both of them done some good things. And we got Robbie, that we signed out of UCLA. We kind of feel like our quarterback room is as deep as anybody in the country. I mean, like I said, you get a guy of Robbie's caliber that was battling for a starting job at UCLA. We got him late in the process, and he got here late, but the future is super bright with him. Walker's playing at a really high level right now. That's what gives me confidence, I guess, for our team. Last year, he's still learning things. It takes time to learn this offense. There's a lot of nuances and intricacies of this offense, and he's done a really good job. It's his second year in an offense, and I love the way he's playing right now, doing a lot of good things. And the guys behind him all of them are ballers. All of them could play. If Walker wasn't playing at the level that he's playing at, it could have been a closer battle, but he's just playing at a high level right now. And so because of him, I feel really good about this season. Football is not a complicated game. It goes as a quarterback. I mean, yes, the trenches are important, but everything starts with the dude with the ball, and our quarterback's playing really well right now.
Any more questions for Coach?
Coach, you talked about mental preparation and just a really generic question, but how do you keep things fresh in terms of like philosophically with like from week to week, but also just as a coach in your 30 plus years? And
That's a great question. Great question, Vic. It's interesting because, like I said, I mean, I've been doing this for 35. This will be my 36th season, 17th year being a head coach. I couldn't sleep last night. I mean, I normally set my alarm, but I need to set my alarm. Just woke up and looked at the clock. It was 3 something, and I got up and came. But your mind is always racing of things, and so Klesi Crochet, our director of football operations, she does a lot of my presentations to our team. I just have ideas she puts in a PowerPoint because if I did it, I'd be drawing on the board. I'm not very technically savvy in that stuff, and I know I put her under pressure because it's always late. Like our meetings start at 8 o'clock, and and I normally come to her. Well, sometimes our meetings start at 7, and I normally get to her at 6:30 with some thoughts. But I'm always thinking of stuff. What does this team need? Well, how can I improve? We did this yesterday. You think of a certain talk, a certain video, a quote, just so many things. Again, but just been doing this for so long. Like you say, you try to think of different avenues to reach people. Not everything can be a barbecue. Not everything can be yelling at people. They tune you out, and not everything can be a pat in the back. This isn't recreational sports. Like, hey, that's a good try, Johnny. Keep trying. You got to be honest and upfront with people. But that's a big part of it is trying to keep guys motivated, because especially during camp, the days start to run together, the meetings start to run together, the practices start to run together, and if you don't keep guys motivated or try to inspire them the best you can, I mean, that's a big part of it. But I'm not the only one doing it. Like I said, the assistant coaches do it, the team leaders do it, our captains, our position guys. But it's a big part. I mean, it's a great question. It's a big part of doing this. And when I know when I don't get up early in the morning again, I'll get out. You know, I'm like I said, it's my 36th season. I'm 60 years old. Been, been head coach for 17 years old, and I feel 17 years, and I don't feel any different. I still get up early and work out. I still have that burning desire. I'm still competitive. I still want to win. Like I said, it's hard to say what do you feel confident about so many questions, because it's hard to feel confident. You're nervous. But when those nerves leave and kind of feel like you've arrived, you get crushed in this profession. So hopefully we've done a good job of that.
Any more questions? All right, final question.
Coach, Deepak with Ziality. Last year you had one sauce. What's it going to be this year?
Well, it's been interesting. We've been able to get two sauces this year. We have enough for green and red sauce, but our food's improved, so we're super excited about that. We actually get lunch, breakfast and lunch, so that's exciting. But our guys also recognize it's been cool for me to see guys that have come from USC, Arizona, Purdue, Utah, you know, these other Power Four schools, and they've come where, you know, they eat a little bit differently. You know, their stuff looks like a 4-star restaurant, and our guys have come and been appreciative. But with that said, the people that feed us do awesome. You know, the people, you know, Francisco and Raul, those guys are, I mean, two different chefs of two different catering companies. Man, those guys have been amazing. So grateful for them. But I think guys coming and being able to appreciate that stuff, I think is part of our secret sauce. You know, like when these guys that came to school here, none of them asked me like, you know, okay, how much am I going to get in revenue sharing? And guys who came during recruiting visits that asked for that, I told them, we don't have any. Or you get one sauce or you get a burrito. And so they probably didn't show up here, which is okay, because the guys that are in these seats are the guys that are supposed to be here. And for us at San Jose State, we have to be a grimy, gritty group that's not worried about how much money they're making. They're appreciative of the food and the people that serve them. And that's got to be our calling card.
Coach Vic Aquino, Mountain West Connection. So Central Michigan has kind of an identity of, you know, big front, run game with their Marion Luke guy, and just how do you see, at least from the line of scrimmage perspective, like how does that dynamically called from, you know, filling the box or relying on the front three or front four? So how might that work for the scheme basically from your backers, your secondary, and how are they going to control that line of scrimmage in that sense?
Well, I mean, they're a big physical group. You know, all those MAC teams. You know, we're familiar with that conference. You know, we faced them a few times, just in general. You know, teams in that league, and they're a big physical group. O linemen are, you know, ginormous, and you know, tight ends are big, backs are big, and so that's been a big emphasis going into this game. Is just that, like, we have to be ready to go from the jump when it comes to that physicality, and so that's been the big thing all summer and leading into, you know, fall camp and such. Is just that, and the communication piece is always big in football in general. You know, especially on defense, you can't talk enough on the defensive side of the ball. So, you know, we've been working hard. You know, I feel good about, you know, what we got going to show up on Friday night. You know, we don't have any, you know, we're coming out of it pretty healthy, you know, from the fall camp. And so looking forward to the challenge.
Are there any situational areas that you're really emphasizing, especially specifically to Central Michigan? Obviously run, but you know, are there things that you've probably seen on tape?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a little tougher, you know, preparation just because they got, you know, new staff. You know what I mean? What are they going to do? You know, that's always tough. You know, you see what they've done in the past, staff wise, but yet does it match who they have that they're inheriting? So that's the chess match that we're dealing with a little bit. So we're kind of getting ready for a lot of different things, and just kind of there's going to be some feeling out early on in the game to see what mode of operation they're going to be working with. We do know they have a really good quarterback, couple quarterbacks that are back. And so, they have the ability to throw the ball a lot, and strong arm guy and fairly athletic. And like I said, their offensive line's big and strong. And so, trying to marriage the whole idea of what they might do is what we're dealing with right now. So, it'll be a challenge. Like I said, the first few drives for sure will going to be a feeling out phase.
Aaron Johnson with the Mercury News, and Coach Ken just had very high praise for the freshman Jalen Thomas. He said he's had probably one of the best camps that he's seen so far. I just want to ask, what have you seen from him, and what's impressed you about him?
Yeah. I had a conversation with him. He was a safety. He was a high school player that was really good wide receiver and safety in high school. Local kid in Los Gatos, and so we redshirted him last year. He was a safety, and then just looking at our depth and what we had, and his ability to play the ball and his his instincts. Thought it would be I talked to him a little bit. Hey, what do you think about making a move to corner? See how that goes, and he was all for it, and he's just really taken to it. Again, he's just a redshirt freshman, but I think his ceiling is really high, and so we'll see. He'll get a chance to get out there and run around a little bit Friday.
And then obviously with the loss of Dansby and Harvey, who's with this corner room as a whole, who stepped up kind of to fill those positions for you outside
Yeah,
of
definitely.
Thomas?
Jalen Thomas has, Jalen Boehner, Caleb Presley, Runye, all those guys have been doing a nice job this fall camp, and they're all vying for those positions, and so it's been really competitive in that room, which was great, and so we'll see. All those guys will get an opportunity to show what they can do, and then we'll kind of hone in on the guys that are producing and making plays and that as we move forward. So, yep.
Coach, Nick Austin with Zeality. The third down defense was something that could have been improved on throughout the year. How much of an emphasis was that during the offseason, during fall camp?
Yeah, big emphasis. We spent, even last year during the time, we spent a lot of time on it, so it's just one of those things that, we've looked at it, analyzed it. Was it more of a scheme? Was it, personnel? And it might be a combination of all of it. And, sometimes you get in those, some of those situations, and, football is kind of weird that way. Like sometimes you get a bunch of turnovers in a year, and then you do the same things, working on the same things for the next year, like how to get turnovers, and you get zero. Like what? And so why? And so but we analyzed it. It's been a point of emphasis. Got to get off the field on third down. So we get the ball back to our offense and let them do their thing. So, yeah, it's been a big point of emphasis for sure.
And with Jordan Cobb's leaving, who has really stepped up to sort of replace that hole in the defense as well?
Yeah, well, Nellalatu, our outside backer, he's kind of the, real catalyst in that backer group. Obviously, Jordan Pollard is a really good player, and he's taken a lot of ownership and being a good leader. Nolan McNeil Franklin, he's another guy that's inside that's doing a great job. And Ethan Powell, that whole linebacker group is kind of our group that we feel, good about as far as like a lot of experience and a lot of leadership in that group. And that permeates throughout our defense, those guys. So, losing, Cobbs is a big deal, but I think those other guys played a lot, last year as well. And so I think they're just picking up that torch and carrying it on from there.
Any more questions for Coach?
Oh, you guys are easy. Okay.
Hey, Coach, Niles with the Spear. What are your expectations for the D-line heading into the physical Week 1 matchup?
Yeah, it's everything starts up front. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but they go. We go as they go. So if we can hold the point of attack, let our linebackers, who generally in the past have made a lot of tackles, that's the key. Keeping those guys clean, and they have a huge tax in front of them for sure. Like I said, that's a big physical group that they got up front. We've had a taste of, a physical group in Stanford last year. They kind of know what that's about. Some of those guys that are coming back. So, yeah, it's a humongous deal. And if we're, getting pushed around a lot, it's going to be tough for us, for sure.
And then what's the identity of your defense if you have to describe it?
Yeah, we're going to fly around. We're going to hustle to the ball. We're going to have fun. We're going to try to create turnovers. Just play with our, reckless abandonment and just go and play hard. And, want smart football players out there and understanding the situations and what offenses are trying to do to us as well. But great communicators, all those things, we're looking for on defense. But we talk about a blue line effort, and that's what we want. We want the guys, running the football, creating havoc, turnovers, some chaos out there so we can get the ball back to our offense.
Final question for Coach.
Deepak with Ziality. Coach mentioned Stearns had a great camp. In what ways has he stepped up as a leader on that D line and as a team more generally?
Yeah, he's a real vocal guy. Like he's a guy that really takes care of his body. Like he's put on, like he came in as an outside backer and he weighed 205 pounds roughly. Okay, now he's 270. You know what I mean? So he's a monster that way. Like he loves working out. He loves to eat right. He loves practicing. All those things he enjoys it, and that just all the guys feel that and they want to be a part of that as well. So he's got that charisma to him, and he carries it out to the field. It's not a lot of rah and no backing. You know what I mean? He backs it up what he's doing. So again, excited to see what we got with him playing in under the lights. So we've got a lot of those things that we're excited to see. You just don't know the unknowns out there until you play somebody. We played against each other for I don't know how, when you talk about spring practice and in the summer when they're going against each other when we're not there to, a month now in camp. We just got to see what we got. You know what I mean? But like what we've seen out of them leading up to this point. But we gotta hit another color jersey.
So gaining 70 pounds, you must have used 2 sauces.
yes, he did probably. Yeah, that's a good thing. But he's just really conscientious of his whole body and how he sleeps and how he fuels his body, what he drinking to eating, all of it. He really cares a lot about it, and he walks around like his shirt is too small. You know what I mean? So.
It is.
Coach Victor Kino, Mountain West Connection.
Mm-hmm.
What's an ideal opening series? Obviously, scoring a touchdown, making
Right.
catches, but as a whole, what are you kind of keen on?
Yeah, I think just getting lined up, no pre-snap penalties, our guys' eyes in the right spot, and just playing clean football. Using their technique that they've been taught for the last 10 months, and just playing physical up front. I want to see our offensive line and our running backs play physical this game. That's been a big point of emphasis for us. And it's going to be a good challenge because Central Michigan's talking about the same thing. So it's going to be really, really good. But that first drive is that clean eyes, no pre-snap penalties, and just playing clean football.
And I guess I'm thinking about the Stanford game in the sense that they're big guys up front,
Right.
physical, and Central Michigan has that kind of brand as well. But how do you dictate against that, especially in the end game? It's a grinding game. Maybe it's close, and
Yeah.
how do you kind of counter that? I guess.
It's kind of funny you asked that question because, whether we're trying to close out the game because we're ahead or, we got to come back or whatever it is, it's never really going to change our mentality. In order to go to the places we want to get to this year and win football games, we're going to have to be physical and run the football better. And so, that's a tough question because at the same time, too, though, we want to play fast and we want those guys to chase us. And that's a big point of emphasis for us. But, I think just being able to play physical throughout the whole game, wear the guys down and get up early and just keep the foot on the gas pedal and let Coach Ken tell us when to slow it down. If not, we're just going to push the gas pedal and just keep on going faster.
Aaron Johnson with the Mercury News, and just what are you most excited about seeing these group of guys get their first game action on Friday?
Yeah, I'm excited to guys just for these guys to get out there and play football. I mean, it seems like we've been doing training camp for like 2-3 months. I've been looking forward to this offense and the guys that's on our offense this year since probably 3 days after, the bowl game. We're in Hawaii and we got a couple commits at that time from some of the portal guys. We felt really, really good about just going into the bowl game about next season. So much so we got to refocus on that bowl game in the Hawaii Bowl. But with that said, there's a lot of, when you got new guys coming in, specifically out on the outside and the things that we do in the receiver position group and the timing it takes with the quarterbacks, and we got some new quarterbacks, it's a long process. And so I'm just excited to see those guys be able to go on the field and play against somebody else. They're going to have some good plays. They're going to have some bad plays. And it's the first game of the season. But I just want to see what those guys look like when they're going full tilt boogie against another defense.
And then you mentioned, you're going to rotate a lot of guys in at the wide receiver
Mm-hmm.
position. Is that still the idea heading into the season right now?
Yeah, we want to keep those. We felt like we've done a really good job recruiting and building some depth. Not just getting really good speed or really good players, but building some depth. Because last year, Nick Nash played a lot of snaps. And J-Lock played a lot of snaps. And we asked him to do a lot of things. And so by committee this year, we're going to make up those yards and those touchdowns. And like I said, the goal is to play 14, 15 games this year. And with that said, we got to keep our guys fresh, and we have a fast group, and we want to keep them fast. So, we want to rotate some guys in, and it keeps the guys engaged. Even with the running backs, we got really good running backs coming back, all of them coming back. So we're excited to see how those guys can play and keep them fresh throughout the whole season as well.
And in your offense, do you feel like you were talking about the running backs earlier, and then do you feel like you're gonna give them more chances this year, or is that just based on where you're at?
Yeah, the game and the flow usually dictates how many opportunities those guys get. But I will say this: with it being such a point of emphasis of running the ball better and being more physical, I'd like to see the uptick in the amount of carries that we have. It's hard to win a lot of football games when you're running the ball, 15 times a game. That's not ideal. There's not a lot of teams that win championships at this level that's able to do that. And so, and it keeps it a little bit calmer for Walker. I think he's got a lot on his shoulders. He's been handling it great. But at the same time, too, though, there's nothing like just being able to turn and hand the ball off to a running back and let those guys eat. So,
how you doing, Coach? Nick from Zeality. When I spoke to you and Walker last, the word we used to define this offseason was refining the offense instead of so much learning. How can that sort of manifest itself on the field?
Yeah. It takes a lot of time, like I said, in these games and in this offense to be on the same page. There's a little bit of both, right? So we have a system, we have a package, and there's a lot of things that we're adding into it. It's like you got a really good dish, and you don't want to mess with the great ingredients or the great taste, the flavor of what your protein is. But there's some things that you want to twist every now and then. You go to all these fancy restaurants. I don't really, but, you watch these movies and they got these fancy restaurants and they talk about this, they talk about that, and how we're going to change this menu. Well, it's very similar, as a football coach and especially offense. You're allowed to be creative. Coach Ken allows us and allows me, and I'm very blessed to have him as a head coach that allows creativity and allows growth. And so we want to be able to grow, because if you're not always growing and getting better, you're getting worse in this profession. But at the same time, too, though, we can't forget what like the meat and potatoes are for us. Like, what is our base? What makes us different? What's making us great? So we're refining the base. We're refining maybe some of the things that we do, but we're also going to sprinkle in some different things here and there. And it's what the players can handle. There's some plays today that didn't look too good, and I was just like, all right, we're not running that play, and we're not running that play on Saturday or Friday night because it's not going to be good. So there's always that, and it goes all the way till pregame. When I'm out there and I see maybe just some things just doesn't look right pregame, I'm like, we're not going to run that play, because it's about what the players can do. And as long as they can execute to their fullest capabilities, you can't be a good offense if you're just cut and pasting things out there.
And how has the offensive line really stepped up this offseason, specifically Tyler Chen and sort of his role on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think overall the guys have been taking that physical challenge and being able to move the piles and get, the tough yards, third and shorts, goal line, and all that stuff, and also being able to run the football well. So that's been, like I said, a big point of emphasis, and the guys have been taking on that challenge really, really well. I'm excited to see those guys in those situations. Specifically, Tyler, he's done a really good job. He's a strong kid. He's a tough kid. He's grown into that role, and he's a fiery competitor. So I'm excited to see him and the rest of the guys out there. Like, listen, if we can go out there and rush for 200 yards and we win, I'm going to be really, really ecstatic. And it's going to be one of those things that it's going to feel really, really good because you get what you emphasize, right, in life. And so we really emphasize that physicality and being dominant in the run game. So that's what we want to be this year. Mhm. Yeah. It's the worst. It's terrible because we're practicing for every look that maybe Central Michigan did last year, even though it's a new staff. But you got those players, and they did a lot of this front or this coverage or this pressure, so they're comfortable with it. But then you think, okay, these guys came from Army, so you're going to go ahead and prep for all the different pressures and the coverages and this and that. And then you say, okay, wait, we got to go look at Colorado State from years ago. And so it's not a fun process going into the first game with a new staff. And, and they're going to do a good job. I know those guys. I don't know those guys personally, but I know their track record, and they're excellent football coaches. They're going to get their guys dialed in. They're going to play fast. They're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. So it's going to be a good challenge. And, I stay up at night and I'm just, I'm all nervous. My wife's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." But inside I'm like, man, I can't sleep because you don't know what you're going to get. And then when you talk about the amount of new players that we have on offense in the portal, how it is nowadays, we don't know what we're going to get. So it's going to be surprising, and hopefully it's a good surprise.
Hey, Coach, Hattie Buckley from the Students Farm Daily.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Leland last week, and he kind of mentioned a new culture that was established with San Jose, especially with the new group of guys. So what have you kind of seen with Leland as camp wraps up?
Yeah, Leland came in, and gosh, he's a physical specimen, and he can dunk the ball. I think he won like a halftime dunk contest when he first got here. And he's got so many things, but at the same time too, though, he's from Houston, right, far away from home. He went to JUCO down in Southern Cal. Then he goes to Purdue. Well, I skipped that. He went to TCU out of high school, so he's been around the block and now here. But the thing that's really, really cool is Coach Ken is the best at establishing a culture, at the best guy to establish like a family atmosphere. And I think when you work for a guy or you play for a guy like that, it becomes a lot easier because it's about integrity, it's about family, it's about doing things the right way. And so when you base your culture around family and making good decisions and integrity, everything else seems to fall into place. And especially when you talk about like the portal era, there's a lot of new guys, but if you're always choosing the right, you can never be wrong. And you just got to hold them to that standard.
Hey, Coach, now here. Your offense has been going with the all. What growth have you seen?
It's nice having, those guys back on, and there's a lot of experience on that side of the ball. So they're able to throw a lot of things at us. And that's a really good question because in preparing for a team like Central Michigan where you don't know what you're going to get, and then you got a defense that presents all these different pictures pre-snap and post-snap, it helps us out tremendously. Now, where I think they've got a lot better, they're playing the deep balls really, really well. I think back in spring, we were able to get by them. This, and they're challenging us. And the corners are challenging our wideouts. The windows are way tighter. I think when we started in spring and we put a point of emphasis of being more physical as an offensive unit, they stepped up and they started to stuff us pretty good up in the box. So, those guys not just create chaos, but I think they're a lot more stout. And in defending the pass, especially on the edges, those corners, those new guys that we brought in, has been doing a great job, and it's been making it tough on us. So, it's been it's been fun the last 2 weeks going against our defense, but I'm glad it's over, and I can't wait to get onto Central Michigan.
Couple more for Coach. Hey, Coach, we'll just put the spirit here. I'm just curious for your overall evaluation of what Andy has been doing.
Just, I think Walker has done a really, really nice job of growing into his own person. You know, not having to please other people in terms of, you know, am I throwing the ball well enough? Am I making the right decisions? He's confident in the decisions that he's making, and he's making a lot of good decisions. He's grown as a leader, you know, and the way that he does it, not the way that maybe Emmett did it in the past, not the way that Shevin did it in the past, not the way that some of these other guys have done in the past. It's the way that Walker Egan does it. And I'm really, really proud of the man that he's continued to grow into. And you can tell that about him. The way he walks, the way he talks, the way that he interacts with people, there's a calm confidence about him, and he's a very humble person. And you know, I'm really, really blessed to have Walker as our starting quarterback and as our leader. He's made my job a whole lot easier.
Final question. You just recently touched upon as you're excited to see how the offense is.
Right.
But overall, what's your expectation for the offense going into the season?
Yeah, expectations is to, gosh, that's a really good question. You know, you always want to, you don't really want to say it out to everybody, but I'll tell you what our expectations are. We're going to play fast. We're going to be physical. We're going to be smart about the way we do things, and we're going to be relentless. It's going to be every freaking play. And as long as our guys understand that and play hard, and every moment's like their last moment on the field, I think we're going to be really, really happy with where we're at after each game.